If you would like to support the podcast and get some extra content while you're there, head on over to patreon.com/Severe MMA podcast and sign up. From the rewatch to the Q&A, we will have loads of content every week. So sign up, patreon.com/Severe MMA podcast. And now, here's the podcast. Welcome everybody. It's episode 326 of the Severe MMA podcast. My name is Sean Sheehan, joined today by the Cristiano Ronaldo of Irish MMA media, Graeme McDonald, as we talk about a pretty jam-packed week in the world of mixed martial arts.
So who's the best? If I'm the second best in Ireland, then in Irish MMA media, who's the best? Is that you? You're
Sean
Messi.
Sheehan. I'm the Messi of Irish MMA media. Yeah, you can put it that way. Although I'd hand it to you now, Graeme. You're the best, in fairness, so I'll leave it at that. But anyway, we're gonna talk a little bit, obviously, about Bellator have announced they're coming back to Dublin. We're gonna break that down. Ian Garry has a new gym. We're gonna look ahead to next week's cards, and I'm gonna do one of my famous throwovers to Sean Sheehan to talk about the UFC. We're also gonna talk a little bit about PFL and whatever else is coming up as well. But before we do all of that, we must tell you that this week's podcast is brought to you by Manscaped. And for gamblers of all shapes and sizes, our friends at Manscaped have a can't-miss bet for you today. The leaders in male grooming just launched their 4th generation performance package. The betting odds are in your favour when you use Manscaped 4.0 on your balls. Across the board, this is the package to get you in the mood for whatever your gambling heart desires. Ready to take the leap to male grooming royalty? 2 million men already have. Join the Manscaped movement by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the code SEVEREMMA. And myself and Graeme are on the Manscaped wagon, as you can hear, every week with us. And now that the Premier League season is back and all of that, we'll be putting on some bets, and I'm sure we'll be looking like Anthony Martial, or getting our Manscaped on like Cristiano Ronaldo, my boy, and the performance
Martial looking like 10 years older over a few months.
Yeah, that's
I don't know about that.
Sure, look at the performance package 4.0 is the ultimate parlor to take your grooming game to the next level. Hitting a favourite is fun, but shaving your balls with confidence, the folks at Manscaped had given me that and my trust with trimming my boys. The recently released Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer is a favourite of mine, and I know Graeme's too. The 4th generation trimmer features a cutting edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to the advanced skin safe technology. We love that skin safe technology. It also gives you the ability to turn the 4000 LK LED spotlight on and off when you need it for a more precise shave. Plus, it's waterproof. The Lawnmower 4.0 has you covered for shaving your balls, butt, and even gooch, thanks to the backdoor cover. The performance package 4.0 also includes a weed whacker to chop the worst weeds on your nose and ears. The nose and ear hair trimmer provides proprietary skin safe technology, which helps prevent nicks, snags, tugs, and delicate holes in those delicate holes even. Odds are you'll be sweating and feeling the heat after the big bet. Fix the sweat and stink with Manscaped's liquid formulations, crop preserver ball deodorant, absolutely fantastic, and the Reviver ball toner when you need a boost mid-bet. Manscaped has a bonus add-in to their performance package with their boxers and shed travel bag. These tools get your boys in your comfort zone before the games start. So that's 20% off and free shipping with the code SEVEREMMA at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code SEVEREMMA at manscaped.com. Fellas, don't gamble on shaving your balls with the wrong tools. Choose Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. Right, so Graeme, let's get straight into it here. Let's talk about a bit about Bellator Dublin. Obviously, we're an Irish MMA podcast, and this was probably the biggest story we've had in a while in Irish MMA in terms of events. I know we had a couple up the north, and Cage Legacy have talked about an event, and Cage Warriors, I'm sure, are talking about events and stuff as well. But Bellator have put a date on it. It is the 5th of November. In the Tree Arena in Dublin. We have somewhat of a card announced. We have Stephen Costello against Yusuf Nagazota, Junior Morgan versus Dara Kelly, who, if I'm not mistaken, was last year's Severe MMA Amateur of the Year, so he's making his pro debut. That's big. Danny Nealon, who is the female fighter of the year, or up for the female fighter of the year anyway. I think Sinead Kavanagh might have won it, but she's one of the best female fighters in Ireland without a shadow of a doubt, and she's definitely going for it this year as well. She's done really well. She has a fight on this card as well. Kieran Clark against Jordan Barton, Daniele Scatizzi against Brian High, and then we have and I'm sure we'll have a lot more fights as well, but then we have the top two, Peter Queally versus Patricky Pitbull in the rematch, and then James Gallagher with the first maybe big step up of his career against Patrick Mix in that one. Before we get into maybe those fights and stuff like that, I suppose the first thing we have to say is, will this fight happen? No, will this card actually happen? We're in currently, I know there's a lot of people, and actually more people from outside of Ireland actually listen to this podcast than inside of Ireland, so maybe we should update people. At the moment, Ireland doesn't have any events, so there's no concerts indoors, no big 5,000 to 10,000 people allowed at events. Outdoors, it's still small events. Even in our big hurling matches and stuff like that, it's still socially distanced with 40,000 instead of our 82,000 in Croke Park, our biggest stadium. But it looks like those are going to be adjusted next. Actually, with two big games coming up in the football, and they're both going to be 40,000 as well. So we are not back to everyone allowed in everywhere, and they're making an announcement at the end of this month. So what have we now, the 28th? So it'll be next week, I think, about kind of our roadmap for reopening and things like that. Now, I heard there was little bits of hints and stuff that they were throwing out, and that they want to bring concerts and music and things like that back. But I didn't hear them saying that they want to bring it back with everyone in the crowd. But they did say from September. So, September, October, November, there's another 2 months after that. So they're going to bring them back on a phased basis. Will that phased basis allow it to be back to, 9,500 or whatever it is in the Tree Arena at the start of November? I would be a bit skeptical, to be honest. Someone asked me yesterday what percentage would I give it, and I would say maybe 50-50. Now, do I think we could have an event with maybe 3,000? Maybe. Maybe, but the tickets are already on sale. The tickets are already sold. I asked, is it going to be a full arena? And I didn't really get a response. But I went on and I bought a ticket for someone.
It's probably because they don't know. They're waiting to see like everybody else,
But the tickets did go on sale, though. So
yeah, but maybe they're selling a certain amount, and then they can release more because, you don't want to oversell. That would cause a lot of anger.
Yeah, but I think. What do you think? Do you think the event will happen, or what would your take on? I'm 50.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not 100%, but I think it's more likely to happen than not. As you said, it's coming up in September now. It's basically is September, nearly anyway, and 2 months is a long time in terms of getting people vaccinated and all that stuff. Because I think I haven't been paying close attention to it, but it seems like the majority of people in Ireland are already vaccinated. The problem with bringing people in from elsewhere could cause a lot of fights to be rescheduled or rematched and stuff like that. You could see a lot of that happening. And if the event does start to cause too many problems, like less seats than they anticipate, or more problems getting fighters in than they anticipate, maybe it could end up being postponed or pulled. But I'd probably lean towards it happening. But there's so many factors going on that it's hard to know.
Yeah, and I saw a thing yesterday as well. They're on about when they are opening events, it's going to be like a vaccine passport thing. So in Ireland as well, if you want to have a meal indoors at the moment, you have to have proof that you've been vaccinated. You can eat outdoors with, vaccinated or unvaccinated, it doesn't matter. But if this is I would be very surprised if this event happened and you didn't have to have a vaccine passport, honestly. Now, maybe for indoor meals and stuff, it'll be changed by then. But if it was, let's say, if it was to be 9,000 people at this, I think you probably will. So everyone this card, if you're a fighter or if you're coming to cover the card, if you're coming from America or England or wherever, you probably want to be getting your vaccine now if you haven't already got it to be on this card. But look, it's a weird thing because we should look. This card was announced and we should be talking about it with all excitement and everything, and we are. I'm very excited about it. The hotel booked it the whole lot. I can't wait to get there. Obviously, I'm fully vaccinated and also, and I've had the Rona myself, so I feel like I've the antibodies to cover myself, so I'm not too worried about it at this stage. But we all look. It'd be remiss of us if we didn't discuss that, and we didn't discuss it, the possibility of it. First of all, not happening, and then of it happening with less people there. Look, if I was to call it right now, I think it'll probably happen, but will it happen with 9,000 people? I'd be very surprised, to be honest. But I don't know if Bellator would be worth or would be willing to go through with it with, say, 3,000 people or less, or no people even, like, because they have done events last year in Europe, over in, where was it, Paris and somewhere else, where there were no people in the venue, and they just did it to get the fights out there. And obviously the UFC are doing it regularly, or have in the past anyway, in the UFC Apex with no people in there. Look at Cage Warriors as well. So maybe Bellator are thinking, look, we need to get the, well, maybe, I'm not saying they're thinking it, but maybe if it's a case of you can't have a crowd, maybe they say, look, we have this big fight, we're going to do it in Ireland. It's tough for these people to travel. Let's just get going with it. But I don't know. It's very hard to get anything out of Bellator these days, to be honest, because I don't, look, in fairness to them, I have asked loads of times over the last few weeks since MMA Junkie announced this, and I've been told, look, we'll know in a couple of weeks, and the last one I got was probably a couple of weeks ago, and they said, I think they've kind of just jumped at it here and said, fuck it, look, people know about it anyway, let's just announce it, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but hopefully it does happen. Look, just judging by the top two fights, let's get away from the coronavirus thing, this is a top main card here with only 2 fights in it announced so far. James Gallagher, ranked number 6 here in the Bellator rankings. Patchy Mix ranked number 2. Patricky Pitbull ranked number 1 against Peter Queally, ranked number 4. And, Queally probably should be higher up on that because he beat Patricky in his last fight. These are the sort of fights.
Bellator rankings.
Yeah, indeed. These are the sort of fights that we've kind of been calling out for in Ireland over the last while, because it might be a bit hard to remember now because it seems like it's about 10 years. And it was the last event I was actually at, the one in January of 2020. It just seems like so long ago. But we have always had the Irish fighters. And we've had a couple of other names in as well. We've had the likes of Benson Henderson and stuff. But we kind of wanted the big, right at the top of the rankings, right near the title fights, or title fights on this card. And look, I believe Bellator tried to put a title fight on this card, but it didn't materialise. But this, look, James Gallagher versus Patchy Mix absolutely could be a number 1 contender fight. Peter Queally, if he beats Patricky this time, he's surely going to have to fight his brother for the title. I don't think there's any two ways about that at this stage. These are 2 big, fantastic fights, and I'm really, really looking forward to these. This is a good way to kind of announce the card, Graeme, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. There's some good fights, and we're expecting some more. Usually there'd be a few more fights added to a Bellator card. So, we're obviously waiting on people you'd expect, like Sinead Kavanagh. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk for a long time about trying to put a big matchup together for her, and we're just kind of waiting for that to happen and hoping that will happen. So that could be, like, people probably can guess who that is, and that would be another very big fight. But I think that would depend on Bellator being able to, have a proper crowd there, and there might be some stumbling blocks there. Maybe this opponent doesn't want to fight Sinead Kavanagh in Ireland. So, if it's going to be a full house, we can expect some more big fights to be added to it. If it's not going to be a full house, then maybe there might not be any more big fights to it. But even if there isn't, Patchy Mix and James Gallagher is a huge fight, a huge test, a big step up. Patchy Mix is a very dangerous fighter. Obviously, Peter Queally and Pitbull was a really good fight the first time, ended in a doctor stoppage for a cut. So it's good to see that getting run back. And I think, Queally will have an extra bit in front of the Irish crowd. Like, obviously, Patricky Pitbull will know what he's dealing with and maybe take the fight a little bit more seriously if he didn't before. So it's a really interesting one, both of the co-main event and the main event are very interesting ones. There's a lot of questions going to be answered there from the James Gallagher Patchy Mix fight, and obviously the Peter Queally Pitbull fight is sure to be a fan favorite to get the crowd going.
Yeah, and it's funny as well because usually like these cards are announced, and a lot of people probably be asking us what would our dream card be, or if we could put 3 or 4 more fights onto this, what would it be? And it's actually very hard now because you look at someone like Danny Nyland, who has been announced for the card, and she had a few fights outside of Bellator and now is back in Bellator, and a lot of people like say Will Flory and a Richie Smullen and Franz Malambo, they were released from Bellator, but
Brian
that was
Moore, yeah.
we'll talk about Brian Moore in a second, but like, when will these people be now re-signed to fight on Bellator again, or were they just released because of the pandemic and to let them get fights, or were they released because they don't want them in Bellator anymore? That's the situation.
Or
I'd
maybe
like
they'll
to
offer
see.
them less money to come back, and maybe some will take that, and maybe some won't. Maybe it was just the money thing. Obviously the coronavirus hit nearly everybody. Maybe not these huge corporations like Viacom, but obviously they're sleeping in billions of dollars in cash, as Dana White always says, or they probably weren't hit as bad, but they're a business as well. Their sub companies are obviously trying to turn a profit and stuff, and maybe they cut these guys purely because of their wage. Maybe these guys would have stuck around if they weren't on such big salary or such big purses.
Yeah, and you mentioned 100%. You mentioned Brian Moore there, and Ian McCourt as well. It looks like they're not on the card. It looks like they're booked for somewhere else. Now you never know what can. Well, Ian McCourt definitely is. She's booked. I think we mentioned that last week. Maybe it was on the Q&A. She's booked for a fight in London. And I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about that. But Brian Moore, I think he definitely hinted that he's booked for a fight, and it looks like it's going to be in America, which was very surprising considering after the last fight he really wanted to be on this. But I think at Brian's stage now, it's more big fights than anything else, and he needs to, if he's offered someone in the rankings and it's in America, I think that's probably a better option for him. Although I'm sure he'd love to fight in Ireland, and I'm sure Bellator would love to have him fight in Ireland as well. So maybe that's not set in stone. But it's one of those ones where this card, like, if they needed to, they could really fill it out. Like, imagine you had James versus Patchy Mix, Quealy versus Pitbull, say a Brian Moore versus Caspell or someone like that. You had the Leah fight. Obviously, Leah's ranked like number 4 at the moment. You had, Sinead Kavanagh against, I don't know, who could Sinead Kavanagh fight? I'm not sure. Pick a name from anywhere. Maybe, I don't know. I won't throw the name there, but this could be like an unbelievable card. But I don't think they're going to do that altogether. But it's still going to be good. But it's. Look, Gallagher against Mix. People as well, you said, and Quealy. The thing about Quealy is, and I think he has been able to kind of harness the Irish crowd maybe more than most people who are not maybe the main event fighters, because of his walkout for one, and because also that mad comeback that he did. But it's also kind of working against him a little bit in the Miles Price fight, I suppose. But he kind of said that, I interviewed him between that fight and his next fight, and he kind of talked about that, and he mentioned it after the big win as well, and he was kind of saying that he was more used to it this time, and he was able to harness it, as I said, better. And for Patricky Pitbull, he's fought in front of some big crowds and some raucous crowds, I'm sure, and that. But the Irish crowd is a little bit different as well. A lot of these lads, like Patchy Mix as well, it's one thing fighting on Bellator cards in America, but fighting in front of, if there is 9,000 Irish fans in there, that's a whole different ballgame for a lot of these lads.
By the end of the night in the main event, they'll have a good few points sunk.
Yeah, it is a mad one. It is a mad scene. You have to be there. So I'm looking forward to that. And the Gallagher Mix fight, I think James Gallagher, it'll be very, very interesting to see the work he's done with James Krause, and what changes he has made and how he's looking now. Obviously, we know how good James is as a wrestler and a jiu-jitsu artist. He's been absolutely fantastic, imperious over his last few fights, obviously since the loss to Ricky Bandejas, but we haven't really seen much of the striking. And if James Krause brought that up a level, it could be the next level of James Gallagher as well. Now, a lot of people talking about James and saying he's never been tested, and saying, a lot of his opponents and Patchy Mix and other people are talking about, James is no good and he's being protected and everything like this. Well, this is the opportunity to show it either way. So that's going to be good. I also think it's interesting, will James Krause be over with him? Will John Kavanagh? Who will be the guy in his corner? Will the two of them be in together giving the instructions? I think that's an interesting dynamic as well to see how that works out. But this is it's great. Look, it's great. Just great to see MMA coming back to Ireland. It's great to be able to speak about fucking fights and stuff like that, rather than the whole coronavirus and the politics around it and stuff. So it's I can't wait for it to be back. Are you going, Graeme? Are you going to come to the fights?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like, I don't see why not. It's like a big kind of, could be a big coming of age moment for James Gallagher as Patchy Mix. Like, he's kind of putting it harshly, but this is definitely a big step up. This is like, this is a tough fight. This is one where James will have to, show improvements to win, I think. And yeah, I think this is a big night in Irish MMA. Obviously it's been a lot of years since we've had regular shows, but it's been 2 years now, has it, since the last Bellator, the last big show over here?
January 2020.
Yeah, so 18 months ago, nearly 2 years ago. That's a long time. Like, and I think it's going to be. I don't know what the ticket prices are. I think people were saying it was like a huge price bump. Was that
between hold on, I have it here. I bought one and it was 80 quid, but it cost me fucking 100 because it's of all the taxes and all, or whatever it is. I think it's between like 65 and 300, but that's for most, like, the good. If you want to buy a good ticket, it's 80 euro, but goes up to 100 with all the charges and like you have to buy the fucking insurance and now as well for these cars, like, because it really, there's a big chance it could go. It is it is expensive, but
that, like, if they had kept it at like a normal kind of regular prices from a few years ago, I think this would have been sold out very quickly. People would be excited to go. People are kind of missing the local Irish MMA scene and the local shows, but at that price after a pandemic, that could that could price out some of the real loyal Irish MMA fans. And
yeah, really could, I think. And look, we'll see, I suppose. And if it does price out some people, it might be a blessing in disguise, because I'm not. I don't know if they'll be able to put everyone in. But anyway, look, we'll talk a lot about Bellator coming up over the coming 2 months, and I'm sure fights will be announced and things like that, and hopefully we'll be able to get a full crowd. We talked about James Gallagher there, kind of moving gyms earlier on, but announced this week another, probably up there with James Gallagher's Ireland's biggest prospect, and a few more as well, is Ian Garry, who has announced that he will be training in Sanford MMA over in Florida. And I just kind of looked up Sanford MMA on Tapology, because I'm not the best at keeping track of who's at what gym. Here's some of the fighters that are at Sanford MMA according to Tapology, right? Robbie Lawler, Anne Lunasang, who's obviously a champion over in Asia, Anthony Rumble Johnson, Derek Brunson, Rory McDonald, Vicente Luque, Gilbert Burns, Michael Johnson, Jared Gordon, Takashi Sato, Jason Jackson, Darian Caldwell, Martin Nguyen, Andrew Filo, Logan Storley, Kyle Nesbitt, Impa Kasangana, just to name
your
a few.
boy Jason Jackson.
My boy Jason Jackson.
Your two boys together at last.
Yeah, but if you even look at him, Jason Jackson, right? Gilbert Burns and Vicente Luque and Rory McDonald, for a welterweight to be going in training with those 4 welterweights, you couldn't ask for better, really, for Ian Garry, could you? It's like, okay, we've talked about the whole Team KF thing, and that was very, very unfortunate. I think everyone, if they had their way, it probably would have stayed the same, and he would have done it that way. They looked like they had a great thing going and everything like that. And I'm sure we've talked about that before, and we can talk about it again. But we are at a situation now where we need a new gym, and this seems to be a good decision, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, like, for a lot of years, 10 years, people have been talking about Irish MMA fighters needing to go to these gyms to become the best fighter they can, and you need to move over to some big gym with all these UFC fighters, all world champions from other organizations. And Ian's doing it at a young age. Obviously the circumstances were far from ideal, but surrounding leaving his old team and all that stuff. But this is as you said, this is a killer's row of welterweights in one gym, and Ian's a young guy. He's still learning. He's still he's still young in the game. He's still making his way, and I'm sure he's going to learn a lot of things from them. And it'll be interesting to see how it all works out. Obviously, he'll be in a different country for the first time. He's not over there alone. He's got his girlfriend manager over there with him, but it's definitely a culture shock. So that could be something to deal with. But over time you'll probably deal with that and get settled in, and maybe it could end up being the best thing for his career. It's obviously a very disappointing situation for all the guys at Chris Fields and Tom King and all that. But for Ian, you can't go back. You have to just look forward. And I think he's made a good choice in terms of kind of a fresh start in a gym with obviously, as you mentioned, all these guys with such high level guys.
Yeah, even if you look at say like Vicente Luque and Jason Jackson, you leave the other guys aside. Those are two lads who you can look at and you can see clear improvements in their games over the last few years. I always go on about Jason Jackson. I just think he's a really, really good underrated fighter, and has just such fundamental as well. I don't think he's maybe a standout athlete or a guy who you would immediately say this guy is going to be brilliant, but he just does so many things right, and I think a lot of that is down to coaching. And if you're putting someone like Ian Garry, who has the je ne sais quoi, I suppose, with the athleticism and the confidence and the ability to talk as well, into a coaching setup like that, it can only be good. And now, look, I suppose you probably don't either, but I don't know too much about the gym. But another thing can happen. Hopefully this doesn't happen, but you're just another guy in the gym. You're not like, with Chris Fields, he was the guy. The guy in the gym that everybody had the hopes for, and obviously, everybody in this gym has high hopes and has high ceilings. So, maybe that could play against them, but it'll all come out in the end. We'll see what happens in the end, but I have a feeling it's going to be a good move. We'll soon see. And then in MMA, there's no hiding place. You're either. There's no place to hide. You either win or you lose, and you're judged on your wins and losses. And if Ian can, keep winning, people will forget all about all this drama, and it'll just be a footnote in his career. So obviously that's what he's wanting to do here. But it's probably hard for the Chris Fields and Tom King and all those guys to see him move on. But by the sounds of things, this was an ongoing kind of problem that maybe came to a head, and maybe was always going to come to a head. So maybe it's better do it now than in the future. Yeah, look, I think the best case scenario would have been if he could have stayed with Team KF and travelled over to America, trained for a few months, and then when he's back in Ireland, train here, and go back and forth between the two gyms. That would have been the best case scenario. But obviously that's not gonna happen now. But I think your point there about Ian Garry or anyone maybe falling into maybe the background in a gym with so many big names. I haven't spoken to Ian Garry and known him for a few years now. I think it's very unlikely that he kind of falls into the background anywhere he goes, to be honest. He's not one of those characters. And I think, look, they'll see it as well. I think a lot of people know him now, and if Henry Hooft is the striking coach here, and Greg Jones as well, the famed wrestling coach. And I think he was if I'm not mistaken, was he an Olympic gold medalist? But he's a very, very, very high level wrestler himself anyway. Those lads are going to set Ian Garry straight in terms of what he needs to do tactically and technically, and if they will know what he is and how good he is. And like, if you're in a gym as well like this, right, with all due respect to the Irish MMA gyms and all of them, like, it's very rare that they're going to have 4 or 5 like top fighters. There's some very, very good fighters, but it's very rare they're going to have that many like ranked fighters not that far away from a belt. Like if you look at at this gym, like the names I called out, Derek Brunson, if he wins in a couple of weeks' time, he's probably going to be fighting for the belt. You know, Rory McDonald was one fight away from fighting for the PFL $1 million thing. Vicente Luque is not that far away. Gilbert Burns just fought for the belt. You know, so Jason Jackson probably one fight away from fighting for the belt. Darian Caldwell has fought for belts numerous times. You know, so they're used to having loads of fighters, and they're used to getting new guys in and making them into, you know, top fighters. And if Ian Garry's good enough, you know, and that's the thing as well, right? If Ian Garry or anyone else comes into a gym like this and they have the ability, or they're going to get to the championship level or the top rank level, they'll stand out. You know, they will stand out. They'll be forced to stand out. And if they don't stand out, they won't be that ranked fighter. They won't be that champion. That's just the matter of factness of it. Like, the MMA is a very cutthroat business, and it's a very, but it's also a very kind of true business. And if you see the reality of it, and the reality of it will show itself in fights and in the gym and things like that. So there's no hiding place. And, you know, a lot of people as well, you know, we've talked about the Ian Garry situation, leaving the gym and everything like that, and there's been a lot of things said about him and, you know, his girlfriend and different things like that. And obviously after the interview I did with him, and look, I spoke about him after the interview as well, and look, I have no beef with Ian or Layla or any of them that at all. If people think that, in fact I'd say quite the opposite, to be honest. But like, there was things thrown around this week on different podcasts and stuff like that, you know, making different accusations about Layla and all these things like that. Now, I just think that's wrong, to be honest. Like, you can have your opinion or whatever else like that, but to be saying things like that, I think is very, very bad. And she came out and she said something, and, you know, Ian has stayed very quiet about all of this, and you can say what you want about him, but there's been a lot of drama going around, and he said almost nothing. You know, he released a statement about the whole, you know, the gym split up and everything like that, and I just think, look, no matter whose side you would take on this, I think Ian has handled it very well. He's said almost nothing. He's went out and he won his fight in Cage Warriors, and he's moved to one of the top gyms in the world.
Well,
you know?
Well, he put out a statement saying that they kind of abandoned him right before his world title fight, which wasn't.
But like, what did they say about him? They called him uncoachable and loads of different things like this. Like, that's
but he came out first and said that, you know. That he kind of broke the silence on that, like, publicly.
Yeah.
But and obviously there was emotions and everybody was upset, and, you know, it was high tension. There's obviously a huge fight coming up the week later or whatever. So it's understandable that when, like, a relationship, even a coach team fighter relationship, breaks up, that everybody's like, you know, maybe not as level-headed as they normally are.
Yeah, 100%. And there's going to be things said, but he said very little. And I look, that you know, the one he released and the one Team KF released, look, we know when they said it, they're both talking from their side, and they're both saying what they believe, and it was always going to come to a head after it kind of came to a head, I suppose. But I think the way Ian Garry has handled it directly after that, you know, and with all the things that have been thrown out there and all the rumours going around, like, the rumours are always going around. And look, I interviewed him and I said it to him, and I'm probably the only one who said it to him. I was straight on an interview about all this and asked him about it. No, he didn't want to speak about it, which is absolutely his prerogative, fair enough. Absolutely no problem with that. But, you know, it's a tough time. Look, it's a tough time for Chris Fields and his gym as well, around, you know, the breakup and everything like that. But Dave handled it as well. I think Dave kind of moved on from it. I saw him putting up a thing today about Takamandu and Conor Diwanowski having big fights coming up as well. So they're moving on. You know, Ian Garry's moving on, and I think, you know, it's great for Irish MMA that someone like Ian Garry is in the UFC and is at a great gym, and I think it's great for Irish MMA as well that there's a very good gym like Team KF with, you know, Tom King and Chris Fields, who are fantastic coaches going around. And look, if they could have been together and doing it together, even better. It's a pity, but, you know, let's. I think it's maybe not time to completely move on from it, but I think it is time to move on and look to the future more than anything else. And you know, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Ian Garry in the UFC. Obviously, he had an injury coming out from the last fight, or coming into the last fight, and hopefully that's cleared up now, and he won't be too far away from making the adjustments. But I think, you know, we talked about it as well directly after after the Cage Warriors fighting when he signed for the UFC pretty quickly, and we talked about maybe not rushing into it, and now it's been a few months and stuff, so I don't think he has like rushed immediately into a fight or taken a short notice fight or anything like that. He's in his gym now. If he does get a fight, it's probably going to be, you know, a couple of months down the line, so we will have, you know, that 3-4 months or whatever it might be in the gym to get used to his trainers and everything like that, and I think that's good. What do you think about that? Like, you know, I think it is tantamount, and it is a big thing to have that time in the gym, to trust your coaches before maybe you take that fight and take that big step into the UFC.
Oh, definitely. You want to get comfortable with your coaches. They want to get comfortable, kind of knowing where you're strong, where you're less strong. You know, to be able to advise you properly and to be able to game plan for you properly. It's definitely important. It's good he hasn't rushed in. I don't know how long he's actually been over there so far. Is it about a few weeks, a month?
About 2-3 weeks, I'd say. Yeah, he was at the PI for a while as well, and then he went there. So he's been there for a few weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, you know, if he was to get a fight scheduled next month, it would probably be fighting in 3 months' time. So yeah, I think, you know, maybe, you know, if he fought at the end of the year, that would be enough time. It's hard to know, like, you know, maybe he'll take a little bit of time to settle in to get normal, but, you know, he's kind of a young guy. He's probably enjoying seeing the world, you know, being in a new place. Florida's probably a lot more, the weather's better than here. He's probably enjoying it over there. So yeah, it'll probably like mentally give him a new lease of life, you know, having all this stuff off his mind, all these troubles with his old gym. So yeah, I think, you know, a fight at the end of the year would probably be about right.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I can't wait. Right, let's move on to talk about some of the fights. Invicta had a fight night on Friday night, getting back to it, their pay-per-view and all. I'm sure myself and Ian will cover that more on the Chasing Pack. I think we'll probably have an episode coming up this week, or if not, in the next week. Also, there's a
nice
case
finish though. Nice finish in the main event.
Beautiful.
While she was shutting down like a robot, she got kicked in the head as well. So yeah, that was pretty vicious.
Yeah, very good. And it's good to see Invicta back. You know, obviously that was Emily Dakota against Danielle Taylor to win the 115-pound title, and the 135-pound title was won as well by Tanisha Tennant over Lisa Verosa. So Katie Saul as well, who's obviously training in SPG Ireland, was on this card and lost the split decision. I believe that one was very close. Serena J. Jesus as well, who gave a great interview with Ian this week. If anyone hasn't listened to it yet, it's very good. You know, she talks about her struggles outside of the cage and her struggles with autism and things like that as well. And, you know, Ian did a phenomenal job in that interview, and you know, she's training with Roxanne Mataferi and over with John Wood and Syndicate MMA and Jojo Calder and things, and she put on I saw some of that fight last night. She did put on a phenomenal performance against Lauren Muller, who, you know, came into that fight with 8 fights and a lot of experience as well. So that's it was a pretty good card up and down from the bits I saw of it. I must go back and check out all of it, but good to see Invicta back, and obviously, as you mentioned, Graeme, a very, very good knockout there. There's also a very good knockout to start the PFL card last night. The switch flying knee by Brandon Jenkins over Jacob Kilburn. It was, if you haven't seen that one, it's over on Twitter, very good. And then there was lots of decisions. Flores, Moffat, Dizzy, and Kamosi all won by decision. Then Shaman Morais had a very, very fun fight against Lazar Stopdojevic, whose name I pronounced perfectly there. And he was down in the start of that fight, but came back and landed a big overhand right and strikes to finish that fight. So a good win there for Shaman Morais. And then, honestly, it was one of the most scandalous things I've ever seen in my life. PFL started at 3 a.m. 3 a.m. main card, right? Well, I don't think you were up watching it last night, Greg. Have you heard about this? Guess what time the first fight happened? It was a 3 a.m. main card. Guess what time the first fight happened?
4:15.
3:59 a.m.
See, I ruined it for you.
You ruined it. A 59-minute delay. I've never been as mad in my life. And then it actually ended up with me falling asleep in the middle of fucking Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Emiliano Sardi. But I went back and watched the co-main and main. Also, the first fight, Martin Hamlet versus Cesar Muchancha Fajea. Fajea pulled his hamstring after, how long was it, 13 seconds into the fight. So they had an hour-long delay.
They exchange leg kicks or exchange body kicks, was it?
And just pulled his hamstring straight away. That's 100% down to the delay. And I know I had Chris Camozzi was coming out saying, he looked like his leg was injured yesterday. But even if his leg was injured yesterday, I'm sure he was carrying the leg, and lots of people carry injuries into it, and it definitely matters, the fact that the leg was already injured. But let's say if he could have gotten through 2 or 3 minutes with the leg not being injured and taken him down and maybe submitted him or something, would that be possible? I think it probably would be. We saw it with McGregor. He was able to get through in a round and a half or whatever it was, with the leg injury, and it succumbed to it in the end. But the fact that it was an hour of a delay, getting cold and everything like that, it's just not going to help him either way. And if he was fully fit, it could have happened as well. We hear athletes talk about it all the time. To be not properly warmed up is like one of the worst things you can do. It always leads to injuries like this, to muscle injuries. So PFL, for anyone watching, for anyone waiting for this, it was disgraceful. And for the fighters as well, more so, it was absolutely horrific. Like, okay, they're on ESPN, but they're also on ESPN Plus. Why not just put it in the middle of the game? It's now streaming on ESPN Plus. We will go live to PFL the second this game is over. Put on the first fucking fight, stream it, and then the next fight have it on TV.
It's not like the first fight is some huge fight that people are gagging for, and people don't want to miss. You know what I mean? It's just another fight.
Yeah, it was disgraceful. Then Antonio Carlos Jr. won the unanimous decision over Emiliano Sardi, and Chris Wade won over Bubba Jenkins. That was some battle. I went back and watched it this morning. There was a lot of wrestling and a lot of submission attempts and things and that. I thought Wade was probably the winner. I didn't watch it in complete. I was kind of rushing through it a little bit, so I didn't watch it in complete. But he did get a lot of offense in at times, and a lot of submission attempts. And it was one of those ones where, when I say a lot of offense, I mean a lot of offense at kind of certain times. And it's one of those fights where, when there is a lot of wrestling, that matters. And I think himself and Bubba Jenkins have a bit of a rivalry going, and fair play to him for winning that. But the main event, okay, did you watch the main event, Graeme? Kabalaya versus Loughnane? How did you score it?
Yeah. See, the first round, I don't know. Like, it's a really tough one to score, and then the second is Kabalayev, and the third is Loughnane, I think. So I think it all comes down to the first.
I scored a 30-27 Loughnane, to be honest. I thought he won every round handily enough. I was like, maybe not handily enough. That's wrong. But in
the third round, he landed that big uppercut, stunned him, busted up on his nose, and I think there was a lot of kind of clinching, but no real proper takedown with impact strikes or anything like that. So I think that round is Loughnane. But the second, I don't know. I'm trying to remember exactly what happened in the second. Nothing really much happened. I think
the second round was where Loughnane
was more volume from Kabalev, but maybe more accuracy from Loughnane.
Yeah, and then there was like a takedown, like with a minute and a half left or something like that, and Kabalev did absolutely nothing with it. Like, I thought the first round, Kabalev took him down, right, from a kick from Loughnane, and Loughnane just boxed the ears off him from the ground. Like, Kabalev was landing some body punches, and if you look at the numbers on screen, it was like 54-44 in
just them on-screen numbers, though, they're a nightmare.
That's what I'm saying, right? So it was 54-44. All of 54 of Habaleyev's punches, if it maybe fucking 40 of them, they were like little body punches, the boom boom, and tried to hit the head. 2 body punches and you're missing the head. Whereas Loughnane is like fucking just boxing the ears off him from the ground. I 100%, without a shadow of a doubt, think Loughnane won that first round. Like, without, and I watched this morning. The first thing I did, you rang me, Graeme, so you'll be able to attest to this and woke me up. And I was like, oh shit, I haven't seen the fight. I went straight on and watched the Chris Wade fight and the Loughnane fight. I hadn't seen the result. I didn't hear the result until it was announced after the fight. So I didn't know. I have no dog in this fight or anything like that. But like, I just think Loughnane won that fight clearly off of his back. Kabalayev did some good work late, and I think he did some good work late in the second as well. The second was closer, without a shadow of a doubt, because he did land some very, very good stuff late. But I thought Loughnane work on the feet was enough to win that round, to be honest. I just thought he was cleaner. It was one of those fights I was watching it live, and I was hearing the commentary, and the commentary was god-awful on this. And I like Sean O'Connell. I think he's very good, but he gets into this stupid shit, and he doesn't understand the scoring. And as well, the issue with the judges at PFL is I think it's in New Jersey, isn't it? And they had like this bubble, and they have all these local judges who are not the top judges in the world. I firmly believe if you had the likes of, Sal D'Amato, Eric Colon and things like this, I think Loughnane would have won this fight. Honestly, I think it's one of those fights where at the end they call it a split decision, and Sean O'Connell on the thing is like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I won't even say my opinion on that. And I'm like, it's a wrong decision. I really think it is. Like the third round, you said Loughnane landed the bigger shots. I don't think many people are debating the third round. I think Loughnane definitely won that. Although it wasn't.
I think the second round was, the one that I would have given to Kovalev, but maybe I need to go back and watch it with a finer kind of judging eye like you do. Yeah, it's a tough one. It was a very close fight. Like either way, obviously. The way the commentators were going on, you thought it would be like fucking 30-24 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe in the old scoring, maybe Kovalev would have won this just with wrestling. But nowadays, it's a tough one. I need to go back and watch it with a finer eye. But obviously you're the resident judging expert here.
The resident legend is what I am. Let's be honest here. But yeah, look, I wouldn't call it a robbery per se, but like that, I 100% think he won the first round. I think he won the second round, although it was close. And the third round, I think he won the third round as well, but maybe it wasn't as clean as I don't know.
I thought his third round was cleaner than his first round.
I don't know, that first round, it was, if you go like strike for strike in numbers, it's close. But the damage that was done with his strike, it's just because he's on the bottom. It's literally just because he's on the bottom, and that should make absolutely no difference whatsoever. It's like, I'm looking at the front of MMA fighting here. It's like Kabalaev grinds out Brendan Loughnane. You shouldn't be able to fucking grind someone out to win. It should be the strikes landed and the submissions gone for and things like that. It was just one of those fights where I was watching and I fucking knew where I knew that the judges doing this, and I knew where we were, and I knew the commentary, and knew everyone talking about it. It's one of these ones where people should be mad at this decision or really talking about decision, and I guarantee you I'm the only one. Everyone listening to this podcast, you'll probably listen to fucking 10 other podcasts this week as well, and I guarantee you no one else will bring up this decision as a controversial decision. And I don't even think Brendan Loughnane probably thinks it's a controversial decision, to be honest, but I fucking do. I really do think this is a controversial decision.
Have you spoken? Maybe you could reach out to one of your judging union friends.
I did, and they actually haven't seen the fight yet, so maybe I'll be able to. I reached out to two different lads, and they haven't seen the fight yet. So it was so fucking late last night. I wouldn't blame them. So yeah, I'll maybe see later in the week. But yeah, look, Habalive goes on to the final anyway, and he'll be meeting Chris Wade. So that should be a bit of a battle as well. Two wrestlers there. And Hamlet versus Antonio Carlos Jr. So yeah, it's this is the big issue as well with PFL. Like we talked about it last week, all their big names are nearly gone now, apart from Kayla Harrison. These playoffs have really not been good for PFL whatsoever. It's been a bit of a shit show, to be honest, in terms of like losing their biggest talent. And last night was maybe the biggest shit show of an event I've seen out of a top promotion in a long time. The production and all of that was just horrible, just awful. So yeah, PFL, and I've given lots of compliments this season.
I didn't watch the event live, but like over the last couple of years, I think they've done a better job since they kind of rebranded and stuff like that.
I do too, but I don't think last night was great.
Yeah.
It was bad. Right, so coming up, I will throw it over to myself in a second. I'll talk about the UFC card. But coming up next week, I'm gonna have Sean.
Paddy the Paddy.
Oh well, we'll talk about that in a second. I'm gonna have Sean Dinny on to talk about KSW, but there's a very good KSW card coming up. Roberto Soldic in the main event, fighting for a 170-pound title against Patrick Clinch. Anton Rakic is on this card as well. Damian Janikowski against Pavel Pavlak. That is a real. This card is fantastic. Dario Stosic as well as on the. This is a really, really, really stacked KSW card, and it's coming up on the 4th of September. So that's next Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm really, really looking forward to that, and I'd be tuning into that one if I can. But I will have Sean Dinny on to talk more about that one. There's a ONE FC card as well coming up next Friday night. The women's 125-pound title is up for grabs there as well. Is this all women's fights? It looks like it is. It looks like it's all. Oh no, there's a few men's fights, but there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 women's fights. And this maybe this is a Grand Prix or something. There are 4 of them are 115 pound fights. So yeah, that should be interesting to tune into. And it's a whole card of women's fights. Like, no, it is. It's a whole card of women's fights. Actually, sorry, I was looking at the name there. It was Daniel. It's actually Daniela. So yeah, it's all women's. So that's fun. Let's see how they get on with that. It's called One Championship in Power. So that's fun. Let's see how they get on. And then the Bellator don't have a card next week, did they? Let me just look here. Yeah, no, Bellator don't have a card next week, but the UFC have UFC London circa fucking Las Vegas as David Zawada versus Alex Morona, good fight. Jack Shore is on the card.
UFC Liverpool, you mean?
UFC Liverpool, yeah. There's lots of the guys from this side, and Molly McCann as well is on this card. Khalil Rountree against Modestas Bukowskis. Paddy the Baddy against Luigi Vanderimi, Tom Aspinall, Sergio Pagovic.
His old rival as well, Julian Rose, is on the card as well.
Yeah, that's
against,
interesting.
Charles Jordan.
I think if Rosa wins that, I wonder will he call out Paddy Pimblett again. That could be very, very interesting, because I think a lot of people around this side of the world maybe would love to see that fight again. I know Julian's fighting down at 145, although it says this is a 150 pound catch weight, which is odd, but I'm sure he'd be happy enough to go up to 155.
I think it's a short notice. I can't remember exactly.
Let me just look here. Jordan was supposed to fight Leron Murphy, yeah. So that's a big pity as well. I think Leron Murphy is probably one of the most underrated guys on on this in the whole UFC. Paul Craig was supposed to fight Alexander Gustafsson as well, but that fell out of this card very unfortunately. But before we get to Paddy, what from the undercard sticks out to you? Like Jack Shore to me sticks out. He's 14-0 in his career now. He's fighting he's fighting a good tough guy with a 9-1-1 record. He's a guy from who could make waves, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he is. Like obviously, don't know too much about his opponent, but I think it's not too difficult of a fight. We've seen some very difficult fights for local guys in the UFC early on. Obviously Molly McCann as well. I think that's a tough fight. It could go either way. It's probably going to be a close decision. Obviously Paddy will talk about. Ariana Lipsky against Manda Baum is another one on the main card. That's a pick'em.
Is Mandy Baum, is she in XPG, or oh my god, man, she was there for a while, wasn't she?
Yeah, I'm not sure if she's still there, but I believe she was there. I'm not too sure about that. But if
she wins, we call her Irish, so
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, depending on your success. But no, this is a pretty good card. Like I'm interested in the main event. The co-main event is definitely. I'm very interested to see Tom Aspinall, and I think this is a good test at a good time. Obviously, Paddy the Baddy is kind of one we've been waiting for to see in the UFC, and it may not be the most stacked card for names for casual fans, but it's one I'm looking forward to. Yeah,
so let's talk a little bit about Paddy Pimblett. He's fighting Luigi Vanderimi, who has had 3 UFC fights now at this stage, and he's gone 1-2. I think this is a good way to maybe start off Paddy's career. Against someone who has, out of those 9 wins, he has 5 knockouts and 4 submissions. Kind of a guy who is well rounded, but I think it's a sort of test for Paddy Pimblett that I think is about as fair a test as you could get in the UFC, as a lot of these big name fighters, as you kind of alluded to there with Jack Shore a second ago, have been getting coming in. Obviously Reece McKee and other lads have gotten very, very tough.
Somebody you could imagine if he had been cut from UFC after his last loss, that Paddy could have fought in Cage Warriors.
Exactly, 100%. So I think it's a very good matchmaking, and I think it's a good debut for Paddy. Like, I think the thing with Paddy is he hasn't had the greatest time of it over the last couple of years. He fought David Martinez in 2021, and he fought Dickie Dalton obviously after a string of pullouts and different things in 2020, and before that, he had the loss to Sodden back back in 2018. So it was, it came up on nearly 2 years between fights there for Paddy at one stage, after he had lost the title in 2017 to Nad Narimani, after that close fight for Julian Erosa. So it feels like the Julian Erosa fight was, it was all the way back in 2016, 5 years ago, and it feels like 5 years ago, and Paddy's only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fights in those 5 years since that. It's not a lot. It really isn't a lot. And what we haven't seen from Paddy is those last 2 fights in the last 3 years against Decky Dalton. You know, we know what happened in that. Obviously, Irish MMA fans, it was only 2 minutes and kind of 51 seconds. Decky kind of fell at the start of that, and Paddy did a great job of finishing him off. And the Davina Martinez fight only lasted 97 seconds. So we haven't seen much of Paddy. You know, has Paddy improved an awful lot? Has his hands improved? Has his defensive ability on the feet improved? We don't know. You'd like to think it has.
Has he been an IB there, or has he been in the gym?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure, you know, Paddy talks a lot, and I'm sure if he heard that and he heard you saying that, he'd probably go mad at you. But I think that is the case, and he's even talked about that himself before, you know, about staying off the Chineses and the Ferrero Rochers and stuff. And I know what to talk now, but you know, I'm also not.
Especially when you, as you said, when you're inactive, when you don't have a camp, you don't have a set goal in the near future. You know, obviously you have goals, but you don't have a fight to build up to.
Date,
so so like, you know, the devil makes work for idle hands, as they say.
Indeed. Is that like a line from a fucking Morrissey song or something? Like, it's like, that's like something now you would bring out in here in the middle of this podcast. No?
Yeah, it actually is, but I was actually thinking of it.
Fantastic. That is fantastic. I hate Morrissey's no good. He's fucking Irish blood English.
Actually, it's something similar to that in the Morrissey song, but it's not actually that, but it's a play on that, I think.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, look, I'm really looking forward to seeing Paddy. And like, Paddy is at the stage now where if we see the Paddy from a few years ago, I look, and I'm being very harsh, I don't think he's good enough to succeed in the UFC. I really don't. But if we see Paddy with an extra 10 to 15% added to that, improvements in all areas, he absolutely could be. Paddy has always been a top prospect, but he's never made that move. And I'm not saying that he hasn't made the move in his ability, but he's never shown that move on in ability in the cage. And look, that was down to him winning his last 2 fights so quickly. So it's not a criticism here, but it's something we just haven't seen yet. This will be a fight, I think. I actually, maybe we won't see it in this fight, but over his next 3 or 4 fights, we need to see it. And if we do see it, you know, sky's the limit for Paddy. But it remains to be seen whether it exists or not. But yeah, I think a lot of people, you know, he's been talked about with online with Conor McGregor and different people. I wouldn't be making those comparisons yet. You know, he's a very good talker, a very good outside of the cage at times, you know, and things like that. But I think there's a few big fights coming up here for Paddy, and I think he's a lot to prove over the next few fights for people who kind of been watching Paddy with a fine-tooth comb over the last while. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. I look forward to seeing it happening. As you mentioned, that Aspinall Pavlovich fight. It's a big fight for Tom Aspinall. You know, Pavlovich 14-1 in his career, is a few good wins. You know, he got a big Alistair Overeem fight there a couple of years ago, and you know, he beat Maurice Green and Marcelo Golm after that as well. But Aspinall, you know, we talked about him the last time, and when you beat Andrei Arlovsky, I suppose it's tough to get good matchmaking after that. But I think this fight makes a lot of sense. It's a tough fight, don't get me wrong, but I was kind of worried that he would be pushed into that next level again and maybe get someone like, you know, maybe a Derek Lewis or even a Cyril Gane before, you know, he obviously got the title fight and things like that. But this is a good move, I think, and it's a tough fight. I'm not saying he's, you know, guaranteed to win the fight or anything like that, but it's a fight that moves Aspinall on, and I think that's exactly what he needs. It's a fun one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not moving him on too quickly. It's about the right fight, I think, and it's one he should win, but it's one that he probably be tested in. So, you know, if he's going to be the kind of fighter that a lot of people, the prospect that a lot of people think he is, then, you know, it's a fight he's got to win. But yeah, I expect him to win it, but I expect you know, it not to have it all his own way, and I think that's the way it should be. And it's good to see, maybe because we've criticized the matchmakers in the past are kind of just throwing people together, so you kind of credit where credit's due.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
and credit to you. You must be a secret Smith or Morrissey fan, because he does say the devil will find work for idle hands to do. And yeah, no, so I think you've been outed. You're a secret closet Morrissey fan.
I think you've just rubbed off on me with your fucking love of Morrissey. He's fucking depressing. You want to be in like a dark room, just like crying like into a wall or something. Listen to that lad. He's fucking Jesus Christ.
Too real for you, Sean. Too real for you.
Too real it is. Speaking of too real, Darren Till is in the main event of this against Derek Brunson. You know, we talked about Paddy, and you know, Ariel is always kind of, you know, joking with with Darren Till and Paddy and stuff about Paddy being the real draw in Liverpool, but he is. There's no two ways about that. That Paddy Pimblett is definitely a bigger draw in Liverpool than Darren Till is, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah,
but
just because Till wasn't kind of associated with UK MMA at all. Never mind Liverpool MMA for a lot of years. Like the UK media didn't even mention him and barely mentioned him until he was in the UFC. He kind of flew under the radar completely, so he hadn't built up that. Like Paddy's been around a long time fighting on Cage Warriors, and people have been following his journey, and that's important to people. People get attached to people. Obviously, people are a big fan of Darren Till as well, like the stuff he's done in the UFC and his talk and all that stuff. But people have been following Paddy for a long, long time.
Yeah, I remember I wrote the article, I think it was 3 years ago now at this stage, when Wonderboy fought Till, and I wrote about, Liverpool were in the Champions League final the same night, and I wrote an article about Liverpool, funnily enough, and I said, I said it like, Darren Till might be a big draw here, but he's not the biggest draw in Liverpool, and I think that probably still stands. But however, I think Darren Till has had like similar issues to Paddy over the last while with, injuries and fights being cancelled, and look at his topology here. Derek Brunson fight cancelled, Marvin Vittori fight cancelled, Jack Hermanson fight cancelled, Robert Whittaker fight cancelled, which is, a lot of fights. Actually, how was a Robert Whittaker fight cancelled a month after he fought Robert Whittaker? That can't be right, can it? Or was it a month before? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's a bit. I'm not sure how that happened, but anyway, he's only won once in the last 4 fights, and with all those cancellations, well, this is a big fight.
And that was a split decision over Gastelum, and Gastelum hasn't looked great. You know what I mean?
Last week, but
yeah. Like obviously his win over Stephen Thompson was very controversial in my opinion. So like looking at his last kind of, looking at his record, there isn't as many kind of big wins as people might expect there.
Yeah, after that Cerrone fight, I think it was at the time when beating Cerrone kind of pushed you on, and then when you be Wonderboy after, I think we spoke at the time, and I think a lot of people spoke that it was maybe a little bit too quickly for Darren Till to be pushed at that time, especially into where Woodley was, then as well, and Woodley has a big fight coming up on Sunday night as well. Like it's your boy Jake Paul bout. Was it even about? But look, this is a big fight for Till, because
what's it all about?
What's it all about? If he doesn't win this, he's down on those rankings. But the one thing that Till has for him is that Adesanya seems to really want to fight him. And I think if he gets a win here, he could bypass a lot of guys and get into it. But Brunson won't be easy. Brunson, I think, has made a lot of adjustments and has upped his game. And we mentioned Sanford MMA earlier on, and he's training there, if I'm not mistaken. Beat Kevin Holland down in his last fight, destroyed Edmund Shabazian, beat Ian Heinisch, beat Elias Theodoro, after losing to Adesanya back in 2018. So it's been a real come up in the career of Derek Brunson again. A lot of people saw him as maybe that gatekeeper to the top 15, and now he's probably the gatekeeper to the top 5. And look, if he wins this, he's probably maybe one fight away from a title fight, or maybe not even that. So this is a huge fight for him, and over 5 rounds, like over 3 rounds, I think this is maybe a different fight. I think it'd favour Derek Brunson a lot more over 3 rounds, because he is one of those guys who, when he comes out and he lets loose, he's a very, very dangerous fighter. But I feel like if it gets into a more controlled pace and he's thinking about the 5 rounds, I think that could suit Till.
The leg locks, the leg kicks will probably build up from Darren Till. Like I expect that to be a game plan, or part of the game plan for Darren Till. And over 3 rounds, it's not as money in the bank as over 5 rounds. Definitely limit your movement, and but there's a lot of questions around Darren Till. Obviously, you mentioned all the cancelled fights. Like this is a really tough one to call. This one can go either way. I think this is whoever performs in the night. Do
you know what I think is weird? I think the slower pace will favour Till over 5 rounds, but I actually don't know if the 5 rounds will favour Till. If it was a slower pace over 3 rounds, maybe it would favour Till. But if it was 3 rounds, the pace would be higher. So it's one of those catch-22 situations. I think this will be a close round, a very, very close fight for maybe the first 3 rounds, and maybe Darren Till might have enough to outpoint him over 3 rounds. I think Brunson will come on in the 4th and the 5th. If it goes that far. But yeah, I with Brunson, he's one of those guys where if this was a couple of years ago, My talk about this fight will probably be he's going to come out, he's going to throw a lot of shots and either maybe knock him out or get tired and caught by Till and maybe pushed against the cage and land a few big shots and maybe get TKO'd or something like that. I think he will be a little bit slower in this, and slower is not the right word, but you know what I mean, more think about the fight more and maybe more tactical I suppose is the word. I don't know if being more tactical against Darren Till is the way forward, but yeah, I think if I was to predict this, I think it'll probably be a close decision, to be honest. But I think a lot of things can change, especially in the mid part of this fight, and especially with the pace. It depends. I think the pace it is. If Brunson comes out and he isn't fighting a 5-round pace, I think he'll probably win. But if he does fight a 5-round pace, I think it'll be a closer fight. But you know, I find it. I don't know. I really don't know who's going to win this fight. I'm just leaning Brunson, I think, but who knows? Who knows? Right, we will leave it there. So, Graeme, for a second, and I will throw it over to the beautiful, magnificent, just a legend, an absolute legend, Sean Sheehan, to take us through the UFC card between Edson Barboza and Giga Chikadze. Take it away, Shawnee. Thank you, Shawnee, very much. I appreciate that. Good man, fair play to you. I'm going to go from the bottom of the card to the top here, so and have a quick talk about it. It was it was an eventful card, obviously, with nothing much that stood out or mattered, apart from maybe the top fight and the top fights. Mana Martinez started off the card by beating Guido Canetti by a split decision, close one there as well. Pat Sabatini got a lovely submission with a heel hook over Jamal Emmers. Emmers was going for the toe hold but didn't manage to get it, and Sabatini he was kind of on a different level. A lot of people were talking about his jiu-jitsu, how good it was. If you remember Emmers, his last fight, he was supposed to be fighting, the name escapes me now, but whatever happened, his opponent got into the cage, and then he pulled a muscle in his back on the way in, or in the back coming in. So it was very unfortunate. He got a bad injury and he was out for about 6 or 7 weeks, I think, with that. And now he's probably going to be out for another while as well, because his knee looked pretty bad after this. So that's unfortunate for Emmers, but a good win for Pat Sabatini. One of the standout performances for me on the night was JJ Aldrich. She had a very good performance against Vanessa Dimopoulos, who came in on short notice, but she had a fight, I think it was an LFA this weekend, and she's fought some good opponents. But I think it was Spencer Kite was talking about how she's lost to a lot of them, but to me she was very game. She tried her damnedest throughout the fight, but Aldrich's jab and her technique just kind of shone through, and I think she's always kind of been that fighter up at 125 pounds now. I'm not sure that's the best place for her to be honest. I don't think she is the biggest 115 pounder in the world. I thought maybe she might go the other way, even if it was possible, but with that technique and her improved defensive ability, she could pose a lot of problems for a lot of people there. Speaking of defensive ability, Darren Stewart didn't show much of that, I suppose, against Dustin Jacoby, who put on a good performance. Stewart came in and tried to take him down immediately, and did once or twice off of a few attempts, but Jacoby kept the pace and kept getting back up. He did landed some very, very big shots and had Stuart hurt, and I think it was Jason Herzog was the referee here, and he gave him a couple of chances, but there was nothing to be done, and Stuart was finished, and it was a great stoppage in the end. Then Wellington Turman and Sam Alvey was a very, very interesting fight. Look, I thought Turman won all 3 rounds. I think one judge, I think it was Adelaide Bird, who did not have a great night at all. I think Adelaide Bird has made improvements over the years from being, a very, very, average judge, obviously, for a while. But I think this card has been not a great showing for her whatsoever. And she gave the 3rd round here, I believe, to Sam Alvey. I thought the first was relatively close. But however you score it, Sam Alvey Wellington Turman got 2 points taken in the 3rd round for 2 eye pokes. One after a few different eye pokes, and in the next one, literally seconds after the point was taken for the first point was taken for the eye poke. Look, the referee warned him a few times and he poked him, so he took the point. I have no problem with that. It wasn't the worst poke in the world, but the next time he took the point for the eye poke, I actually didn't think it was an eye poke really at all. It's only an eye poke, it's only illegal if you have your hands out forward and it goes into the eye. You can even see Chris Tognoni warning Thurman after the first one, either put your hands in a fist or put your hands up. And he had his hands up, he had his fingers up. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And okay, maybe the fingers went into the eye, but the hands were up, and it's just unfortunate. It's an accident at that stage. I don't think you can take another point, especially, okay, warn him and everything like that. Like, okay, this I told you to put him up, but you still can't get him into the eyes. I do not think that was a legitimate eye poke at all. I don't think he should have got the point taken, but it mattered not, because he won anyway, and I think it was the right decision in the end. Then we had, a KO of the year contender, if we didn't have that one in Invicta from Emily Ducote, which Graeme mentioned earlier. You know, a good KO of the year contender is probably not even KO of the weekend, unfortunately, for Abdul Razak Al Hassan, but a beautiful head kick, and absolutely just turned the switch off on Alessio Di Chirico. And that's all to be said about it, really. Di Chirico kind of ducked down to one side. Razak Al Hassan read it and just blistered him with a kick. And that was to close the main card and close the prelim card, and open up the main card. Gerald Mershart, great comeback against Mahmoud Muradov. Muradov really dominated this fight for the first, maybe 4.5 minutes-ish. And was just ahead, and he almost knocked out Mershart a couple of times, but Mershart kept coming back, and there was signs in the last maybe minute of the first round. He landed a few shots. Now, every time he did, Muradov was countering him and landing better, but I thought in the first couple of minutes of the second round, Muradov, to me, lost a little bit of confidence. I know the commentary was saying he was getting tired. I'm not sure if it was more tired or I've hit him with my best shots and I can't put him out, and lost that bit of, pop in his shots more than anything else. And Mershart, when he saw that, he sensed it and he went for it. He got the back and was able to get the rear naked choke, and a really, really good finish there. Then we went on to the three tough fights. Well, we had a Kevin Lee fight in the middle, so I'll mention that. The Andrei Petrosky fight versus Michael Gilmore. He got a lovely TKO with elbows and punches in the third round there, and had one of the worst promos of all time afterwards. Then calling out Jeff Bezos or some shit. Ricky Turcos and Brady Halstead put on a fantastic fight then, and Turcos won the split decision, the tough finale. And I'll get to the top two fights in a second. But first of all, Daniel Rodriguez versus Kevin Lee. Look, Kevin Lee, we've talked about him a lot over the years, and sometimes he flatters to deceive. But Kevin, okay, and this fight, look, it was one of those ones where I think Lee, it was the first round Lee won, and Rodriguez came back and won the next two and hurt Lee a couple of times throughout it, and he won the fight 29-28 in all three judges' cards. To me, watching Kevin Lee, and we spoke about this recently as well, when we were talking about Darren Elkins and different fighters like that, and even like a John Jones, and Darren Elkins and John Jones. What I mean there is, you need in MMA a combination of technical ability and a real fundamental ability, mixed with a dynamism and a toughness and a hardness, and a bit of a wildness as well in the cage. I feel like Kevin Lee has gone too far to the side of technique and tactics, and he's just not a dynamic enough fighter anymore. He's a beautiful jab and a lovely backhand, although he kind of falls into it sometimes, but he throws those shots lovely, but he just throws those shots all the time. He throws like a jab to the body, comes up over the top, and he does it always very well. But when you're fighting someone like Daniel Rodriguez, and he won't box at you like that. He'll step up over the top, make like a little elbow inside, and then hit you with the right hand on the way out, or the left hand on the way out, or something like that, or try to, kind of kick high coming in, and then come with the left hand afterwards. It's just a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more varied than what Kevin Lee is throwing. Like, I think Kevin Lee is a better technical fighter than Rodriguez. Now, I'll take nothing away from Rodriguez. He's a very, very good fighter, and he won the fight because he's a better all-round mixed martial artist, I think. And that's been Kevin Lee's problem for a while. And I think a lot. Look, I was even talking to, well, I won't say I was talking, but I was talking to someone in in a chat, and they were saying to me that, you know, I've always had great I thought Kevin Lee was a great prospect, but not anymore, because it's just been over and over and over. Like, honestly, I put up a meme and I was kind of half joking, saying, you know, the Prince Nazim Hamed, he should just finish kind of meme thing. It is one of them though, where it's just like, I don't think this is ever going to click for Kevin Lee. Like, I really don't think it's ever going to click for him. And that is unfortunate, because he's such a talented guy. And I think Mookie Alexander was saying as well, his chin is always an issue, and his ability to take shots is always an issue for Kevin Lee as well. And like, your technique will get you through a certain amount, and it'll get you through a long way. But if you don't have that physical ability to take shots, as well as the dynamism and maybe the madness of, say, someone like a Darren Elkins, the ability to come back, it's going to be harder and harder and harder for that ability and that technique to see you through. And I think that's where Kevin Lee is now. Taking nothing away from Rodriguez, he absolutely deserved to win this fight, and he's moving on. He's had a great start. I think Aaron Bronstetter put up 6-1 to start his UFC career. So a fantastic win for him. But the story coming out of it will be Kevin Lee, as it tends to be in these sort of fights. So in the other tough finale, the winner turned out not to be Brian Battle. He got the rear naked choke submission in the second round over Gilbert Urbina. Gilbert started pretty well in that one. You know, Battle, but by the name of him, you know he's tough. And you know, for the middleweight division, Battle needs a new bit of life, and maybe he can be that. But you know, I don't think he was as standout as maybe Turquoise was in that fight. But however, then the main event. Actually, before we move to that, they announced in the show as well, we talked about it earlier, Tom Aspinall is now actually fighting Sergey Spivak, so it's not Pavlovich anymore, it's Spivak, so that's a bit of a change. And they announced Usman versus Colby as well, and also Rose versus Whaley, so we'll talk about those maybe in the Q&A if anyone wants to throw a question at me at Severe Mepod on Twitter, and we can talk about that there. But the main event, Giga Kaza versus Edson Barboza. What a fun 3-round fight. I really, really enjoyed this. Giga started off with just a little bit of a higher pace, I think, and Edson was throwing 1 or 2 shots in the first round, and Giga kind of knew quickly, I think, just to like step back for a second, wait for Edson to try his 1 or 2 shots and encounter. And he was doing it over and over and over again in that first round. Now, there actually wasn't that much landed by either guy, but I thought the best of the stuff was by Giga. He also threw like a big shot at Edson at one stage. Edson completely blocked it, and then Giga ran in like he had him hurt, I think, just to kind of maybe cut the judges or something, which is like low-key a very, very good tactic. I'd hope to see more of that. But yeah, I thought he won the first round, but relatively close. I did think he did enough though. In the second round, Barboza came out, and rather than throwing the 3, 4, 5 shots maybe that he needed to stop what was happening in the first round, he just pressured Giga a lot. He just completely like pressured him against the cage, and he was kind of forcing Giga to throw shots to try to get out from there. And then Barboza was kind of picking him off a little bit, and he was landing some nice leg kicks and stuff like that. So another very close round at top, but I thought that Barboza did enough for that, and the pressure was something that was causing a lot of problems for Giga, because in the first round, it looked like, and I mentioned on commentary even, that Giga had the speed advantage. And I think that pressure of Barboza made Giga throw first. So then it kind of gave Barboza the speed advantage, because he could see what was coming and then throw after it. You know, he had that extra second. I'm not sure, even if it was, you know, Giga was that much faster than him in the first, I just think he had that extra second because Edson was throwing first. And he won it that way. So starting the third, I was thinking, like I was talking to Ian about it, and he said to me that Giga looked a bit tired, and I thought he did as well. But maybe there was a touch of taking the rounds off, or just seeing what was coming to him, or maybe he was, pacing himself a little bit. But in the third round, he just came out, and there was no pacing himself anymore. I think he realized between the second and third round that he just couldn't let Barboza pressure him like this anymore, that if he kept doing that Barboza was just going to win that fight. So he decided to fuck that, I'm going to push forward, I'm going to let my shots go, and that's exactly what he did. He hit him with a lot of shots, hurt Edson. I thought the first shot he hurt him was actually like a knee to the body, not the liver side, but the other side. Really, really hurtful looking shot. Then was landing a couple of shots over the top to Barboza. Hit him with a knife. I think it was a right hand that really rocked him. Then and Barboza was doing kind of the stanky leg. Barboza went for a takedown, but Giga kind of got out of it, but then it ended up kind of on the ground again. Giga was going for the Darce choke at one stage, but Barboza managed to get out of it. But when he got back to his feet, you could still see he was badly wobbled, and there was really nowhere else to go. Giga hit him with a few shots. Herzog gave him a bit of a chance, but then stepped in as Barboza fell backwards, unable to stand up straight. And I think it was a good stoppage. Barboza complained about it a little bit, but when a guy hits the ground, there's a bit of grappling, there's a few shots landed, and then he gets back up and he falls straight down. He's badly hurt. He's badly hurt at that stage. And I think it was a good stoppage. Afterwards, Giga was looking for a title shot, but he also called out Max Holloway. So that will be fun. Right, I'm leaving it there, lads. Thanks everyone for listening. Enjoyed it. Q&A will be out Tuesday as always, and we'll have loads more stuff over on patreon.com/SevereMA podcast. Good luck.